I have a soft voice, so I hope you can all hear me. Diana, that was so, I mean, that's a lot to live up to. I don't know if I can. Oh, you are the mother. And now Adrian is taking this on, and the rest of you, and you've done such a wonderful thing. And it's a joy, literally a joy, to be back here and see my longtime friends and meet new friends. You've done a wonderful thing here. And last night, my dear friend Florin said, "It's my family." And that's what you are. You've come together for all these years, and you are family. And I feel as maybe not the mother, but I'll be the great-grandmother. And it's wonderful coming back to the family. And to be with Gorbachev, who, Здравствуйте, who I got to meet in the Kremlin on my 25th out of 53 visits to the Soviet Union. And it was quite an experience. And to see him, his double, sitting here today brings up so many memories. And that first trip that we did was based on when I went to the Soviet Union and I saw that there were no enemies. That was quite profound for me. And being raised in the New Thought movement of the Church of Religious Science and many other religions, but I learned that whatever we think we produce, as Dale Carnegie used to say, what thoughts held in mind produce after their kind. And I realized that we were producing something that we might not be able to reverse. If enough people reached a negative critical mass and thought of them as the enemy and were frightened of a nuclear holocaust or of an invasion, as the movie The Red Dawn implanted those thoughts in people's minds, that we could experience that. And it's that day in Red Square, I realized I had to do something. As a mother, I have 5 children, 11 grandchildren, and hopefully soon a great-grandchild. So I am a great-grandmother. And I thought, I have to do something. My children are living in fear that they will not have a world to grow up in. And then the way presented itself. The inspiration came through meditation. And at our table, everyone was talking about their history with yoga. And Florence said, "Have you ever talked about how yoga and this work goes together?" My background in yoga began 55 years ago with a mother who studied with Yogananda. And one day, well, I would say actually many more years than that, I was 2.5 years old and helping to teach my little brother how to walk. And he was stumbling and falling, and I'd rush to help pick him up and help ease his pain. And then as I was sitting there, as he was going between my mother and myself, I realized something. I could only see him through my eyes. I could only see my mother through my eyes. And I said to her, "Why don't I know what it's like to be you looking at me? Or what it's like to be my brother looking at me? Why don't I know what it's like to be everyone?" And she said the words that set me on the course of my life. She said, "If you knew what it was like to be everyone, then you would know God." So my whole journey began at 2.5 years old, looking for this thing called God. And as a teenager, she brought me to my first yoga teacher, and he was a turbaned Sikh, and he was working with people who had had strokes and heart attacks, and we were learning the breathing techniques. And I was sitting there, and I thought I was a turbulent teenager. I don't know if you know what that's like. Or those who have children that go through those teen years. And I couldn't sleep at night. I was having a restless mind and worrying about things in school. And this teacher, I thought, why am I here? I'm young. These people are old. They've had problems. I don't have these same problems. And I was thinking this. And this teacher looked at me with these eyes that radiated these lightning bolts. And he said, "You need to be here." And then I sat back. I thought, he knew what I was thinking. And then he began to demonstrate a technique of breathing that brings peace to the mind. And he brought his hand up, and as he brought his hand through space, it was such an intentional movement. I could feel this peace just ripple through my entire being. As he brought his hand up to the nose to do an alternate nostril breath, it changed my life. And I thought, I want that. I want to know what it's like to be at peace. No matter where I am, no matter who I'm with, whatever I'm doing, I want to know that centeredness deep inside my soul. And that set me on my course with yoga that brought me to the feet of many masters in India and helped me to host many masters and help them start their organizations here. And that's why they used to call me the mother of yoga in America, but now I'm the grandmother and soon to be the great-grandmother of yoga in America. Each year passes. So I felt that the deepest thing I could give to the world was my own inner peace. I wasn't going to rush out. I wasn't into activism or anything like that. And I believe what Vivekananda, the first yogi to come to the World Parliament of Religions, said when he said, the world is like the kink of a dog's tail. As long as we are holding it, it is straight. But the moment we let go, what happens? Curls up again. So I believe that why should we get out there and affect change? Because eventually you need to do another change and then another change. So I had this idea, just meditate in my own closet, radiate that peace out like the great masters on other planes can do. And I thought, I'll just do that. So for 30 years, that's what I did. And then it brought me into teaching. I was one of the first yoga teachers in the Bay Area in California. And then I had to train teachers because the demand was so great in those days. And in those days, in the 60s, people confused yoga with yogurt. And someone would say, well, what do you do? And I said, well, I teach yoga. Oh, I love yoga. It's so wonderful with fruit. So we've come a long ways. So it was the yoga that actually took me to the Soviet Union that set my course to work internationally. Because I was asked by the Earth Stewards Group to go, I was putting on yoga conferences, meeting of the ways, and called Unity in Yoga. And one of the great teachers, Swami Satchidananda, once said to me, he said, but unity is yoga. I said, in theory, yes, but in practice, no. Because one methodology felt it had the way and the only way. The other felt it had the way and the only way. And then I thought, if we could bring them together and they could honor their differences, they'll find commonality. And I didn't realize that that was exactly what I would be doing with the Soviet Union a few years later. And when I went, yoga teachers were being jailed. And it was, they were just interested in exercise, not the philosophy, so I realized it was too soon. But I thought, what can we do? And that's when I organized the first trip of 82 people to go and thought, we'll take people of consciousness where they don't have to say anything about their spiritual life. They can just be there and hold the field of love with the Soviets. Just hold it. And so we purposely invited people like Diana and Paul and Barbara Marx Hubbard, Patricia's son, and we brought people who had been teachers in the consciousness movement for so long together with one another. They found one another, and then when we went to the Soviet Union and we were in a meeting room, Barbara Marx Hubbard and I were standing outside in the vast lobby of the Soviet Peace Committee, and our group went in for a general plenary where we had simultaneous translation, and we arranged for them to meet with their counterparts. Because I thought it'll help ease the tension between the people if they have a common point, which means their professions. So it'll help loosen them up to have conversation. Well, they didn't eat anything. There was such a hunger for Soviets and Americans to come together that 2 hours into the meeting, the psychologist, who we thought we had arranged with another Soviet psychologist, found out that what they thought was a psychologist for 2 hours was really a cytologist. And then I realized it didn't matter. It didn't matter. We were just so hungry to be with the people that we had seen as the enemy. And I began to discover, as this work led to greater and greater work, being invited to the Middle East and other parts of the world, to China, to, I can't even remember all the countries now, South Africa, different ones, Cuba, Afghanistan, Kosovo. I'm trying to remember. It shows you how long ago that was. Azerbaijan. And I was asked by Moscow to work with the Azerbaijanis and the Armenians when their republics were at war. And so we went, and I discovered something new when we went. We had to meet with them separately and find out what they saw as the origin of the conflict. And I found you never let people vent the conflict in front of one another, but you keep them apart and let them vent the history. Once they feel they have that, then you can bring them together and just have them do one word of what they think the conflict is about. Not the whole history, because they can anger each other in that venting process. So we would do this active listening process where we take a person deeper and deeper into the origin of this conflict. And finally, after letting them vent and getting to the place where they're let all that come out, then I would say to them, now if you could have anything you want, we know what you don't want, but if you could have anything you want, what would you want? And if you ask, even in this country, if you ask people that, very few people can answer that question right away. We're not used to it. We all know what we don't want, which is what we keep recreating. But do we know what we want? And so they stopped, and there was a stunned silence with 26 leaders of the Armenian Republic. And they talked amongst themselves. They didn't know what to say. And finally, they said something which shocked me. They didn't say, we want them to stop killing our children. We want them to release the blockade where we can get fuel and food into our country. We want the Azerbaijanis and our children not to fight one another again. They didn't say, we want Gorbachev to come and visit us after we've been devastated by this earthquake. They didn't say any of that. They said, we want an apology for the 1915 massacre of the Turks of the Armenians.